Silence is usually just silence, but not when it comes from a Sigma male. His quiet doesn't fade into the background. It reshapes the entire atmosphere. People start acting differently without even realizing why. It's not intimidation by force, but by contrast. His calm highlights their chaos. His restraint exposes their impulses, and his stillness pulls their real motives to the surface. The moment he stops speaking, the room shifts. Some people try harder, some get nervous, some grow defensive, and others begin revealing truths they never meant to show. His silence becomes a psychological mirror, reflecting everyone's intentions back at them. And the most fascinating part? He isn't doing it on purpose. His quiet is not a strategy, it's simply who he is. But to others, it feels like an X-ray scanning their character. If that dynamic interests you, if you recognize it, feel it, or want to understand it more deeply, subscribe to Silent Wise. We break down the psychology nobody else talks about. And before you dive into the key behaviors, comment Silent Power so I know you're ready for the next level. They overanalyze his silence, trying to decode a meaning that isn't there. His silence becomes a mirror, reflecting every hidden doubt people try to keep buried, and the moment he withdraws into quiet observation, their minds begin spinning faster than any words he could have spoken. They replay conversations, reinterpret harmless gestures, imagine hidden motives, and search for emotional signals he never sent, because his calm presence removes the usual cues they rely on to feel secure. What unsettles them is not what he says, but what he chooses not to say, a blank canvas the mind rushes to paint with fear, curiosity, and insecurity. As he sits still, their thoughts grow louder, revealing more about their inner world than anything he could have revealed about his. The longer his silence lasts, the more their imagination fills the empty space with stories, assumptions, and guesses, each one more exaggerated than the last. They begin to wonder if they offended him, impressed him, disappointed him, or intrigued him, because the absence of clarity becomes a psychological vacuum. His quiet becomes a puzzle they're desperate to solve, a challenge they never expected to face, and their own mental loops betray the emotional instability they hide beneath confidence. Instead of observing him, they start observing themselves through him, questioning intentions, replaying exchanges, and assigning depth to a silence that may simply be neutrality. His lack of reaction feels like an X-ray, exposing their internal noise. And while they unravel inwardly, he remains unmoved, not because he is hiding anything, but because he doesn't assign meaning to every moment the way others do. His silence isn't a strategy, a signal, or a test. It's simply his natural state, a refuge where he can think without interruption. But people unfamiliar with this kind of presence interpret it as complexity or emotional distance, never realizing that the chaos they feel is created entirely by their own projections. His silence holds no encrypted message, yet it forces them to confront the loudest truth of all. Sometimes the meaning they fear is nothing more than the echo of their own insecurities. They talk more than usual, filling the quiet because it makes them uncomfortable. The moment his silence settles into the space between them, something shifts, not in him, but in the people who stand before him. They begin speaking faster, offering explanations he never asked for, sharing details he didn't request, and stretching small talk into long, nervous monologues simply to override the weight of his quiet presence. His stillness feels like a spotlight they can't escape, not because he is judging them, but because they suddenly hear their own voices too clearly. In the absence of his reaction, they try to create comfort by manufacturing noise, hoping that words will soften the steady, unshaken calm he carries with him. Yet every sentence reveals more than they intend: insecurities, anxieties, contradictions. Because when someone talks without purpose, truth slips out between the lines. As their speech accelerates, their thoughts grow disorganized. They jump from topic to topic,
laugh too loudly, over-explain harmless choices, or rush to fill every pause out of a fear that silence means disapproval. They're unaware that the discomfort they feel doesn't come from him at all. It comes from the space his presence creates, a space where their own unresolved thoughts echo back at them. His silence acts like a psychological amplifier, magnifying the tension they try to hide. The more he listens, the more they feel compelled to compensate, to control the narrative, to prove themselves worthy of attention he hasn't even withheld. They begin to confuse speaking with being understood, forgetting that he observes far more in their restless words than they ever notice in his quiet.
And while they spill sentences to escape the stillness, he remains centered, unaffected, and fully present. He is not intimidated, bored, or disengaged. He is simply attentive in a way most people never encounter. His calm doesn't demand performance, yet it exposes the performance they unknowingly step into. They fill the silence to avoid confronting their own internal noise, unaware that he sees the truth behind their words more clearly than they ever intended to show. They expose insecurity by seeking reassurance he never offered. The moment his silence settles, something subtle but revealing happens. They begin searching for reassurance he never promised, checking his expression, his posture, his tone, hoping to find validation in places he never intended to give it. They ask questions that sound harmless on the surface. Are you upset? Did I say something wrong? Are we good? But underneath the words lies a quiet fear, the fear of losing his approval. His calm neutrality becomes a mirror they can't control, and suddenly they need confirmation that they're still valued, still understood, still safe in the connection. Yet he hasn't withdrawn. He's simply not feeding the emotional uncertainty they project onto him. In trying to interpret the silence, they reveal where their confidence ends and where their insecurity begins. As they keep searching for reassurance, their behavior shifts. They repeat stories, justify decisions, or try to impress him with unnecessary explanations, hoping to earn a reaction that anchors their self-esteem. They lean in with nervous laughter, subtle apologies, or attempts to read his mind, all because they cannot read his face. His composure destabilizes them, not through intimidation, but through contrast. He doesn't need validation to feel grounded, while they suddenly feel ungrounded without it. The silence they fear is simply a space he occupies comfortably, yet they treat it like a threat that needs fixing. Their requests for reassurance become windows into their internal landscape, revealing doubts they work hard to hide when the room is filled with noise. And still he remains steady, not distant, not dismissive, just quietly present. His lack of reassurance isn't punishment, it's neutrality. But neutrality is powerful because it removes the shortcuts people use to hide their insecurity. Without emotional breadcrumbs to follow, they expose their fears, their attachment patterns, their need for approval. His silence becomes a psychological X-ray, uncovering truths without a single question asked. What they seek in him is really something missing in themselves, and his quiet presence simply makes that impossible to ignore. They become defensive, reading his calm as silent judgment. The moment his calm settles into the room, something shifts. They straighten their posture, change their tone, or rush to explain themselves, even when no explanation was asked for. His stillness feels like scrutiny to them, as if his quiet observation is a verdict they can't hear but desperately want to avoid. They misinterpret neutrality as evaluation, and because they cannot read his thoughts, they fill the silence with their own fears. A harmless pause becomes an accusation in their mind. A relaxed expression becomes disapproval. They start defending choices he never questioned, justifying actions he never cared to analyze, all because his calm presence triggers the internal judge they've been trying to silence for years. His quiet doesn't condemn them, it simply forces them to hear the judgment they carry inside. As the silence continues, their defensiveness grows sharper.
They interrupt themselves to clarify points that don't matter, shift blame onto others, or emphasize how reasonable they are, hoping to avoid invisible criticism. Some become sarcastic or irritated, mistaking his calm for condescension, while others soften their tone, trying to win approval he never withheld. It's not that he sees them as guilty, it's that they suddenly suspect they might be. His silence creates a mental vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes every insecurity, regret, and unspoken doubt they haven't fully faced. They defend themselves against a judgment that exists only in their imagination, revealing more about their internal chaos than any argument ever could. Meanwhile, he remains unmoved, not impressed, not disappointed, simply observant. He's not evaluating them, he's evaluating the situation, the energy, the truth beneath the noise. But because he doesn't react, doesn't comfort, doesn't challenge, they're forced to confront who they become when the external reassurance disappears. In trying to protect themselves from his imagined judgment, they expose the wounds they've been hiding behind confidence, humor, or charm. His calm was never an attack, but their defensiveness reveals exactly why his silence feels so powerful.
They shift into performance mode, trying to impress him or gain his attention.
The moment they sense his silence isn't offering validation, something inside them flips. Suddenly, every gesture becomes exaggerated, every comment sharpened, every story stretched just enough to seem more interesting. They laugh a little louder, speak a little faster, or highlight their achievements in ways that feel strangely out of place. It isn't intentional, it's instinctual. His quiet presence creates a pressure they can't fully name, a feeling that they must earn his attention because he won't give it freely. Instead of relaxing, they start performing, hoping to provoke a reaction that proves they matter in his eyes. But the more they try to impress him, the more obvious it becomes that the performance is not for him, it's for their own insecurity. As the silence continues, the performance deepens. They start competing with their own image, offering clever remarks, showing off knowledge, or shifting the conversation to their strengths. They exaggerate confidence, intelligence, humor, anything that might capture a moment of his focus. But he sees right through it. Where others would be distracted by flashiness, he notices the motivation beneath the behavior, the need to be seen, approved, chosen. His silence acts like a mirror, reflecting back the truth they try to hide behind charisma. Their need for his attention exposes how rarely they feel grounded without it. And because he doesn't reward theatrics, the performance grows more strained, more desperate, revealing more than they intend.
Meanwhile, he remains steady, unshaken by the show unfolding before him. He doesn't mock it, doesn't engage it, doesn't encourage it. He simply observes. And his lack of response becomes the very thing that dismantles the performance. When applause never comes, the mask becomes heavy. The performer becomes aware of how artificial their actions feel. Slowly, they confront the uncomfortable question his silence brings. Why did I feel the need to perform in the first place? His calm strips away the illusions they use to impress the world, leaving only authenticity, the one thing he responds to and the one thing they avoided by performing.
They reveal their real intentions because silence removes the space for manipulation. The moment his silence settles into the room, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. Every tactic that relies on noise, confusion, or emotional pressure suddenly collapses. Without a reaction to shape, without emotional cues to exploit, people lose the tools they normally use to influence others. His quiet becomes a mirror that reflects motives with uncomfortable clarity. Those who came with hidden agendas, unspoken expectations, or disguised demands find themselves exposed, because manipulation requires movement, and he gives them none. In that stillness, their intentions leak through their words, their timing, their tone, their sudden switches in behavior. His silence pulls truth to the surface because it eliminates the distractions that help people hide it. As the quiet stretches, the unraveling continues. Someone who wanted control begins asking leading questions. Someone who hoped to guilt him reveals their resentment. Someone who intended to use charm lets frustration slip through the cracks. Without the usual back and forth to mask their motives, they start showing what they actually want: validation, obedience, attention, advantage. And the more he refuses to engage emotionally, the more transparent their behavior becomes. Silence isn't passive in his hands, it's diagnostic. It reveals who respects him and who only respects the version of him they can influence. Meanwhile, he watches every micro-shift without saying a word, giving them all the space they need to betray themselves. Eventually, their own discomfort forces them into honesty, even if they never intended to be. The quiet strips away performance, leaving only intention. They reveal what they are jealous of, what they fear, what they want from him, or what they hoped to control. And while they may think they're gaining ground by filling the silence, he sees every move for what it is, a confession disguised as conversation. By the time they realize how much they've exposed, he has already made his judgment. His silence wasn't avoidance, it was strategy. And their unguarded truth gave him more information than any argument ever could. When the dust settles after all the over-talking, the reassuring, the defensiveness, and the hidden motives spilling into the open, one truth remains. His silence was never the weakness they assumed. It was the filter that revealed everyone's true nature. The Sigma doesn't need conflict, confrontation, or explanation. He simply steps back, and the world tells on itself. If that kind of psychological clarity fascinates you, stay close. Silent Wise is where we break down the mind behind the quiet, the power behind the restraint, and the strategy behind the man no one can predict. Before you go, tell me in the comments, which behavior have you seen the most when someone faced complete silence? And if you want more high-retention breakdowns like this, subscribe to Silent Wise, the quietest channel with the loudest truths.